Hey gang, welcome back to another video. So I recently came to the realization that I've never made a scratch-built lightsaber. I mean, I've made them from kits and I've 3D printed them, but I've never gone to the hardware store and constructed them from pieces of PVC pipe. And so on this unofficial Star Wars Day video, I'm going to change that. So let's get into it.
A few months back, I had the idea for a lightsaber that was a mashup of my favorite original Trilogy sabers. I made a 3D model of it. But it felt like most of the shapes could be recreated from PVC pipe and various fittings. So using this as my inspiration, I headed off to the hardware store and picked up the following parts. A pair of 1-inch PVC couplings, a second single PVC coupling with notches on the sides, 3 1-inch to 1/2-inch PVC bushings, 2 1/2-inch to 3/4-inch PEX couplings, 1 PVC union socket end, and a 3/8-inch faucet lock nut. With all my parts squared away, I got started with the emitter shroud. I created a template for this Graflex-inspired profile that got taped to one of the 1-inch PVC couplers, and then I took it over to my bench sander to remove a bunch of bulk so that it would be easier to shape down with a rotary tool. And speaking of a rotary tool, I grabbed a large sanding drum attachment and started to shape the coupler until it matched the profile of my template. This took a bit of time since these couplers are thicker than standard PVC pipe, and it made a total mess, but after a few minutes I had the shape I was after. I also took a second and drilled in a few holes with a step-up bit to match the cutout from my 3D model, and then I took it to my vise and connected the holes with a few cuts from a hacksaw. This will get a bit more refined with a file, but it's good enough for now, and I can shift my attention to removing the molded writing from the PVC bushings. The core of the lightsaber is made from a 1-inch PVC coupling, along with 2 of the bushings, as well as 2 1/2-inch to 3/4-inch PEX couplers. One will get installed halfway into the bushing and then inset into the 1-inch coupler. A second PEX coupler will get pushed all the way into the bushing and then inset into the opposite side. This will give me 2 different profiles from the same part. Up to this point, this entire build has been PVC pipe based, but this is the part where I deviate from the plan. I 3D printed these parts because the plumbing washers I intended on using were $3 a piece, and I just couldn't bring myself to spend $27 on just this detail, especially when I'd hoped to keep this whole build under $30 in materials. So 3D printed it is. These will get threaded onto a 1-inch piece of PVC pipe, and then I'll cap it with this notched 1-inch PVC coupling, which got trimmed down to roughly 1.5 inches on my bench sander to more closely match my design. Once they've set up, I'll glue on the coupler and I'm just about finished with the grip and can shift back to the emitter. I made some washers to fit the opening in the bushing as well as a dowel to further help with alignment. I'll glue them in place with a bit of CA glue and then set it aside to cure. While I wait, I could get started on the pommel. This was the most challenging piece to find, since I didn't want it to be too much larger than the diameter of the grip, but I also wanted something that kind of looked like my 3D model, and what I landed on was this faucet lock nut and half of a 1-inch union socket fitting. Now that I have all the basic shapes, I did a quick assembly to see what it looked like by sliding all of the pieces over a 10mm dowel, and I think it's really close to my original design. Now I just need to add in some details. The biggest missing detail from my model is the switch detail on the core of the lightsaber. And the best method for adding this is to do a bit of fabrication with styrene. I'm using a 1mm styrene sheet for this that I cut down into its main pieces and will assemble it with a bit of CA glue and accelerator. I have to admit, this was a bit of a process, since I needed to make small adjustments throughout the assembly to get the fit right. But having the sanding twigs, a sharp razor blade, and even some tin shears helped to bring everything into alignment. And once the major profile was there, I could bring it more into its final shape by sanding down the edges with 80 and 160 grit sanding sticks until the edges were flush and smooth. Now it may not be the tidiest box, but it's my first time working with styrene like this, and in the end should be perfectly fine since the bubble strip will hide any of the unsightly seams. The only thing left to do is to glue it to the middle PVC coupler and slide in my bubble strip to test the fit. Now that all the major parts are built, I can get to priming the saber parts, and once they're dry, can apply a base layer of matte black paint to everything. With the black base layer dry, I could switch to my airbrush and apply a coat of high gloss lacquer. This glossy surface will help my metallic paint look more reflective. While those parts dry, I took the grip section, some pewter rub and buff, and a small nylon brush and started to apply an extremely light coat to help give this section a metal undertone. I made sure that very little of the rub and buff was on my brush and really worked the brush in every direction, since I just wanted to accentuate the facets and the grip and give this a worn metal look. It's subtle, but it would look too new without it. After about 30 minutes, I could get to applying paint to give my plumbing parts a realistic metal finish. This gets sprayed on at low air pressure, and when these parts are dry, they'll get top coated with the same high gloss lacquer to protect the metal finish, and then set aside to dry before I can assemble and start weathering. The lacquer will protect the finish, but does have a tendency to dull the shine of the metal paint. But my intention is to make this lightsaber a bit more on the grimy side, so a super reflective surface isn't exactly necessary. With a few hours of dry time behind me, I assembled the parts and can start aging this prop. I'm going with the usual suspects for this build, starting with a raw umber oil paint and following it with a lamp black oil paint. What I like about using oil paints for this application is that regardless of the weather, I have a good amount of working time with oil paints, so I can brush it on, wipe it off, and manipulate it until it looks how I want, before setting it down to dry. So I keep pushing it around into all the cracks and recesses before wiping it away, and when I think it's at a good stopping point, I can sit back and admire my first plumbing pipe lightsaber.
Now, while I'd hoped to keep this build under $30 in parts, I came in at $30.94. And better yet, it looks almost exactly like my 3D model. I guess it goes to show you that scratch builds of this type will always have a place in every prop maker's tool bag, even when there's higher tech methods available. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. But most importantly, go make something, and may the Force be with you.